Shalom. Welcome, everyone. We're in Parashat Vayyechi, the last Torah portion of the book of Genesis. If you want to raise your hand or annotate on the screen, here's how you do it. I will call on people who raise their hands who want to read each subsequent verse. Who would like to be the first reader? Okay, I'll read it. Vayyechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim 17 שנה, ויהי ימי יעקב 2 חייו 7 שנים ו40 שנה. All right, so we got a little bit of a clerical work going on here, just recording the length of time. Let's see, Jacob was in the land and how long he lived. Jacob, of course, being the patriarch. What was he, 118 when he stood before Pharaoh? And so he was in the land for 7 and 10 years. So we'll call it 17 years. And the whole, or the days of Jacob, the years of his life were 7 years, 40, and 100 years. So 147 years. Anytime the number is greater than 10, you can use a singular instead of a plural. So here, Sheva is, 7 is less than 10, so it's Shanim. Here it's greater than 10, so it's Shana. Is there anything interesting here? Not really. We've got Vayyektol forms there and there, which tell us it's a consecutive narrative past tense. And then he lived, and then it was. And here we've got a Vav showing up as U instead of V. Why is it showing up as U instead of V?
Because the mem follows it.
That's right. Before the bump letters, you typically expect there to be an U instead of a V. The exception is when the syllable is stressed, then you're going to get va instead of u. That's if the stress goes there. But usually without stress, it's going to be u and then one of those 4 letters. All right, Elizabeth, would you like to read the next verse? I saw your hand was up there for a second.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to it.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead.
Vayik Rava Vavu
Mm-hmm.
Yemei Yisrael Lamot Vayikra Leave no La Home Seth Le Yosef
Right.
Vayomer Lo Im Na Mitzati Cain Ba'anecha Shim Na Simna
Mm-hmm.
Simna Yadka Tachat Yarki Vareki Ba'asita Imadi Chesed Ve'emet Al Na Ti Bereni Vayyechi Rai. Vayyechi Rai.
B'mitzrayim.
Vayyechi.
Very good. Excellent. Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael Lamut. Vayikra Livno Liosef. Vayomer lo Im na מצאתי חן בעיניך, שים נא ידך תחת ירכי, ועשית עמדי חסד ואמת. אל נא תקברני במצרים. All right, so here we've got a lot of Vayikto forms. We can tell because of the Vav, the Patach, the Dagesh, that it's a Vayikto, Vayikto, Vayikto. Vayikto. Come on, who's going to correct me? That's not a
Isn't that a Hekatal?
very good. That is not a Vayiktol, it is a Vekatal. What is the difference between Vayiktol and Vekatal?
Besides the vowel?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is the difference in meaning, I guess.
Vayyechi is
It's narrative.
Vayiktol is narrative, as opposed to
Second.
Vayyechi. It can be future.
okay, can be future. What I'll usually describe it as is as generally as possible. It's some sort of incompleted action. So whether it's future, whether it's a command, whether it's subjunctive or hypothetical or volitional, its meaning usually depends on the verb or verbs preceding it. It inherits its meaning. Let's see. For example, here is our vekatal. Where's the closest preceding verb?
Same.
Very good. So if that's our preceding verb, let's kind of hash or parse this out. What kind of a word is sim? What form is it?
Imperative, I think.
Imperative, command form. Do this, my son. And we can tell it's imperative because of the na. We know it's a volitive or volitional verb because of the na. It's a key word. Okay, so simna, if this is imperative, then that means the vekatal is likely inheriting the same meaning. Do this, my son, and do this, my son. So it's still incompleted, but what flavor? Look to the previous verb. All
So
right.
when you say you will deal with me and you will deal with me, it's like a command. It can be interpreted as a command. You will deal with me, or a future if you're talking about something. Is that what?
Yeah, suppose this were a standard yiktol verb instead of an imperative.
Mhm.
Then I would assume that this should be translated more like a yiktol, which might be a future tense or something like that. But because of that imperative, I see this as an imperative and therefore make that an imperative in the English. And do it. Do to me or do with me chesed ve'emet, kindness and steadfastness. Al natik bereni. This is not a vayiktol. What kind of a word is this? What form is this verb?
Looks like a yictal.
It does, with one important caveat. There's a na in front of it and an al in front of it. And those clue us into what form it actually is.
But it's a command to bury. Do bury me.
Or negative command, right? Don't bury me
Oh,
because of the al.
so Joseph.
Very good. It is a second person jussive. The negative commands are jussives. And the problem with jussives is that you don't usually see the difference between a yiktol and a jussive. Only if it's an irregular root that has a mater lectionis in it, or maybe the stress got moved around or something. Jussives will typically take a shortened form of the verb. And either because a mater lectionis letter is missing or because the last two consonants will drop to shva and then throw the stress on the preceding syllable. And then sometimes the last vowel becomes a segol because it's a consonant cluster and it's a real mess. And let me give you an example. Tomer. Or rather, al tomer. Now, because of the al, it would be too easy for me to ask, is this adjussive? Of course it's adjussive. But how is this word, tomer, different than the yiktol form?
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a matter of stress, and this vowel appears to be different. The yiktol form, tomar, means you will say. Whereas tomer turns it into a shortened or jussive form. And the al in front obviously makes it negative. Al tomer throws the stress here, which means we originally had two shvas at the end of the word. It's a shortened form of the verb. But that consonant cluster is hard to pronounce, so Hebrew inserts the segol to make it easier, and now it's tomer, but it's still adjussive, and I know it only because of where the stress is and that segol. Whereas with other verbs that are weak, such as, excuse me, I said weak. With other verbs that have a mater letter, it'll be a little bit easier to see. And how about this one? Al-takum. Al-takum. Anybody recognize what root that comes from?
Boom.
Kum. So the yiktol form, what would it look like?
Boom. Yeah.
Very good. So this is your full form with a mater. The shortened form loses the vav and throws the stress. Al-takum. Do not arise.
Is that a kamaskatan then?
It is. Once you lose the stress, it's now a closed unstressed syllable, so it gets kamaskatan. Very good. It could theoretically take a kibbutz as well, and in some places it'll even get a cholam and keep the stress. It's all over the charts, but in general, you expect it to throw the stress to the preceding syllable and lose the mater. All right, let's try another one. If this verb, tivne, is the yiktol form, what would be the jussive form? Al.
Steven?
Tiven. Exactly. Tiven. Throws the stress here, creates a double shva, which is hard to pronounce, so the segol is inserted. Al tiven, we lose the mater. Tivne means you will build. Al tiven, do not build. You'll notice that this shortened form of the jussive is essentially the same shortened form that shows up in Vayyechi as well. Like Vayomer instead of Vayomar. Vayomer is expected, Vayomar is pausal. So yeah, there is a correlation between jussives which are shortened and Vayyechi which tend to shorten as well. He feels have a yod in them, so they will lose their yod. If we take the verb tashkim, what will it be? If that's the yiktol form, then what will the jussive form be?
Al tishkim. Al tashkim? Would
It'll
it
be
be?
al tashkem. So here the stress didn't get thrown because we have a historically long chirik yod vowel there. It keeps the stress. Sorry. Historically long vowels will maintain their length. They don't reduce. But it did lose the chirik, it did lose the mater. So it's still a shortened form. Tashkim, you will rise early in the morning. Al tashkem, do not rise early in the morning. Okay. So that means with the al and the na, we have tikrav. We don't really get to see tikbor. We don't get to see any, shortened forms, and especially with that pronominal suffix on the end. And for most strong verbs, there will be no difference in the jussive shortened form and the standard yiktol form. It's really frustrating. So keep an eye out for al and na to tip you off that it is a shortened form, a shortened jussive form. Okay. Who would like to read?
Before you do that, would you talk about the imadi as with me as opposed to emi?
Right. Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about it, but I'm not 100% on it. The biblical form imi does exist. In modern Hebrew, it's not used as much, but rather iti is used more often. But the imadi appears to have something else built into it. One grammar suspected that maybe it was im ad D, something like this, and then you lose it simply because of the feebleness of the gutturals, and it turns into imadi. But there's no way to prove it. I wish I could give you a better explanation as to why there's a dalit there. I'm not sure that I have a good one.
And one quick question. Under my thigh appears to be an ancient idiomatic phrase. Does that mean to like lift up his like brokenness or what? How would you? I don't know. I'm guessing here.
Yeah, that's another great
Or my
question that I don't really have a good answer to. It's gotta, in my opinion, it's gotta be related to the intimacy. It's like you're gonna be right here, all up in my space, and we're gonna have a moment that you're never gonna forget, and you're gonna swear something to me that you're gonna do no matter what.
hmm.
But yeah, you're right. It shows up over and over again. Maybe it'd be a good idea to find I don't know, some scholarly article on it that maybe can find a connection to the context of the ancient Near East that's maybe outside of the Bible that offers some more clarity. I don't have a good answer for that. Kind of like a handshake nowadays closes a deal. Apparently, back then, holding your hand under the thigh is just what you do when you're making an oath with someone.
Let's say that the word testimony is from that idea.
Testimony is?
Yeah, because it's related to testicles.
Ah, never would have put those two together. There are plenty of scholars that think that this is putting one's hand close to the genitalia of the one who is asking for the promise, and almost like making an oath with the progeny of the individual. I don't know. You could go down that rabbit hole. I don't know. To me, it seems a little awkward to go down that rabbit hole. Maybe, maybe not. I would be interested to read a good scholarly article on it and tying it into ancient Near Eastern culture. I don't have a good answer. Okay. Here we are on the next verse. Who is interested in reading? Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah. ושכבתי עם אבותיי, וניס... ונסתני,
Mhm.
ונסתני ממצרים, וקברתני בקבורתם, ויאמר אנוכי אעשה כדבריך.
כדבריך. Very good. ושכבתי עם אבותיי, ונשאתני ממצרים, וכבר... no, no, no. Okay. וקברתני בקבורתם, ויאמר אנוכי אעשה כדבריך. Okay, here the stress is on the end. How do I know that?
It's a vegetal, and it's the first person common singular, and that gets the stress at the end.
Very good. Does this symbol help me at all figure out that it's a vegetal?
No.
Correct, it does not. Does this symbol help me at all figure out it's a vegetal?
No, that just tells me that that's a kamatz and not a kamatz katan.
I disagree. With the following consonant having a full vowel and not a schwa, I would argue that it's not marking that it's a kamatz instead of kamatz katan. In fact, sometimes we'll get a meteg on short vowels. So it does not necessarily just mark long vowels.
Okay.
And look, for example, here, it shows up on a segol. Short vowel.
Is it like a secondary stress then?
Yes. So my original question, does this help me know that this is a vegetal? The answer is yes. But why? Because secondary stress will never be right next door to primary stress. So if the secondary stress is here, then that means the primary stress has to be on the next syllable, which is tying into what you said earlier. Final stress must be vegetal. So while that does me no good, this actually does.
So what you just said, that a meteg will never immediately precede a stressed vowel. Is that what you mean?
See, when you word it that way, I can think of exceptions. In fact, this word right here would be an exception. I guess it has more to do with when the meteg is marking secondary stress.
Okay.
Like this one right here, this meteg, this ties into the problem of defining the purpose of a meteg. Originally, a meteg just means hold that vowel just a hair longer. Simple. But when you try to define it with excruciating detail in a grammar like Jazanius or Yuan, you get a long laundry list of possibilities of what the meteg can or may do. And it is just confusing. So according to the grammar, this one would mark secondary stress, but maybe that's just because I'm I've got circular reasoning. I know it's a vekatal, so the stress must be here. So therefore, this is the secondary stress. And because it's the secondary stress, I know it's vekatal with final stress. Therefore, circular reasoning. Whereas the grammars would call this an instance of clarifying that this should be a syllable of its own
Mhm.
rather than a syllable with the next letter. While that may be true, I still teach my students to go ahead and divide it this way as if it were a silent schwa, because that's what we expect to happen usually, tish more. Syllable division happens right there, right? Not exactly. This is a medium schwa. It's neither an audible schwa nor a silent schwa. Historically, it had a little bit of pronunciation to it. And so, therefore, technically, it should be kind of like this or something. It's kind of pronounced, but not. The point is that there used to be a full vowel on the ta here, and shmor has an audible schwa. So it's just a really confusing mess. And I try to simplify things by saying, yeah, just pretend this is your syllable marker. But in certain Ashkenazi communities, they wouldn't call this tish more. They would call it, well, put a dot right there, tish shemoyu. They would actually make a sound for this, like it's an audible schwa. Anyway, sorry to take you down that long, confusing route. Hopefully, you learned something from it. Um, this is this also a vekatal?
And the tani, that's a preposition.
What is?
Preposition suffix carry me. It's
Oh, the pronominal suffix, you mean?
that pronominal suffix.
Okay, is the ah part of it or not?
Um, hmm.
The tough question. Usually with suffixed forms, the connecting vowel is an ah vowel. But here we know the subject is you shall do it to me. So it's actually pulling double duty. It should be nasata or unasata, but then with the suffix, it becomes unasatani. It's pulling double duty. It's both a connecting vowel and it's the theme vowel for 2ms. And you shall carry me. Same thing happens over here. Ukvaltani, 2ms. Bikvuratam in there. Kvura. Why is there a tav here?
Puzzle.
What is it?
Anything to do with the fact that it's puzzle?
It is not pausal.
It isn't.
Excuse me. If this word could appear differently in a pausal form, I agree with you. This is the place it would happen. But this word does not appear differently in a pausal form. It always looks the same. What's
Them.
them?
Them.
So ignore it. Why is there a tav?
Is it feminine?
Yes. So we've got what's the absolute form of this word?
Keve. Kvora.
Kvura, a burial place. Very good. Vayomar, pausal, otherwise it would be vayomer. And because of this zakef gadol, we know that this is probably a pause, introducing text. Anochi ese, I will do, kidvarecha, pausal. According to your davar, word. Why is there an u instead of a v in front of this second verb? Same with here.
It's a
The U takes schwa.
Before a shva, you can't have two shvas
ah,
vna or vk, so the first shva turns to a full vowel. In the case of conjunction and vav, it becomes oo. That's absolutely right. So not only in front of the bump letters, but also in front of a letter that starts with shva, or that has a initial letter that has a shva. Excellent. Any questions on this before we move on to the next verse? All right. Who would like to read?
everybody's so quiet tonight.
So quiet. Crickets.
Mhm.
Vayomer hi shav'a li vayishava lo vayishtachu Yisrael al rosh hamita. We got something to parse out here. First off, the easy stuff. Vayomer. There's that shortened form in the Vayyechi with the segol and the penultimate stress. And he said, Revi'i tells us, pause, Hi shav'a li. Zakef katon, another pause. What is going on with this verb? What's the root? What's the binyan? What's the form? What's the person, gender, number?
It's an imperative of some kind.
Okay.
The hey means something at the end, and I'm not sure what.
Okay. So there's a hey at the end. We'll have to deal with that. It's an imperative, yes. Of which of the seven binyanim?
How do you feel?
It's a call.
It's neither kal nor hifil.
Yeah.
Hifil imperatives will have a patach. Kal imperatives will typically have a chirik, like shim u, or it would have a shva, like shma.
Okay, so is it a he feel?
It can't be hifil because those imperatives start with hey patach, like hatzlicheni, or hatzileni, rescue me. It's going to have a ha at the front. But here it's he ha, he ha.
Nif'al.
Nif'al. So a nif'al imperative also starts with a hey.
Ah,
Why? Well, because if you didn't have some sort of a placeholder to hold the chirik right there, it would look like a completely different verb. Shav'a. She swore, like a call verb. So you have to have a placeholder here in order to keep the chirik. The
Was that
dagesh,
a nifil?
nif'al. Yes, it is a
Oh.
nif'al imperative. And we've got the EA and the strong dagesh, which is indicative of the missing noon of nifal.
okay.
And now all we have, well, the root, shin, bet, ayin, has to do with completion. So it's like swear an oath to me that you promise to keep and complete, or complete an oath for me, something like that. It's also related to the number 7, which is apparently some sort of a complete number in some way. And now all we have to deal with is the hey at the end. When does an imperative have a paragogic hey at the end? If the imperative action is either done towards me or for my benefit. He's asking him a favor. Do this for me, bud. Swear for me, please. Promise
So
me.
is it Joseph? No?
It's imperative, which means that it falls into the category of volition or volitive Volitive verbs, where first person would be the cohortative, second would be the imperative, and third would be the jussive.
So
So
it
it's
would be
not,
cohort.
it is not, it's second person. He's talking to you, Mr. Joseph. So it's second person. You said it was an imperative. If if I say let me do something, that would be cohortative. And if I say let him do something, then it would be jussive, third person. But here, Israel or Jacob is speaking to Joseph. It's second person. Hey, Sonny.
It's you.
You.
So it's just plain old imperative is what you
Plain old imperative. We're just not used to seeing Nephal imperatives showing up that often in the Bible.
and that's when you see the hey show up at the end and just imperatives.
Also in the infinitive construct.
Mm.
Like the verb here would be lehi shavea in the infinitive construct. Are there any other forms where the hey shows up? Nothing comes to mind.
My first thought was that would be PL because you've got the same form with the doubling, if that with that dagesh, that dagesh and the shin. Um, it appeared to have the same form as PL.
Uh-huh.
That was my first thought.
If that were your second root letter, then that would mean hey is the first and bet is the third. What's the ayin doing?
Ah, gotcha.
So that's
Yeah,
how
of
you can be sure that the sheen is actually first root letter and therefore indicative of Nephal.
course.
All right, so we looked at one weird verb. The next one is the next one right here, Vayyechi, is just a Vayyechi. Is it shortened at all? Remember, Vayyechi tend to shorten. Is this shortened as compared to a standard Yiktol form? Sorry, I circled that one. Just this one right here. What would be the standard Yiktol form of this verb? It's Nifal, Ia, missing noon.
Shabbat.
Yishavea. That's a furtive patach. Yishavea. This is what we would expect. Sorry, there should be a dagesh right there. This is what we should expect for a yiktol. Did it shorten at all? Well, kind of. This long vowel went short, which removed the need for a furtive patach. Va yishavah rather than yishavea. Instead of a long vowel, it's a short one. So it did kind of shorten a little bit. Now, if you want to talk about shortened vowels, have a look at this long bugger.
Yishtachavu.
How do you read it?
Vayishtachu. Vayishtachu.
What is going on here?
Yishtachavu.
With a yod here and an oo there, it must be talking about they as the built-in subject, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay, explain.
Well, u can be him, and
What?
that's the way they translated it.
Wait,
Uh,
wait. Oo at the end of a verb can be him?
if it's directed, if it's a pronominal suffix, yeah.
Well, who could be a 3ms, but this isn't who, it's who.
Mm.
So while you're correct that who can be a 3ms pronominal suffix, this is a chet, and therefore I'm afraid that's a moot point.
So u is part of the verb you're saying.
It appears to be.
And then it's a 3MP.
I'm leading you by the nose down the wrong path.
Okay, let me take a stab at this.
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Okay. If you don't mind if I write.
No, please do.
Okay. Ish. So Vayyechi.
Yep.
Who?
So you
I'm not
got
sure
the
if this is correct or
Vayyechi.
not.
Uh-huh. Are you splitting it into syllables or
What I'm looking for who. There's something going on with this Dagesh right here,
okay?
and I'm looking for maybe a missing. So we've got Ish.
Wait a
This
second. Wait a
this
second. What's going on with that Dagesh? It's following a Shva. Isn't it just a weak Bagad Kifat Dagesh?
Oh, yes, right.
it appears to be replacing another consonant or a, a vowel or consonant.
Oh.
Is this stumping you all?
Yeah, Vayishtachu. It does it have
Let's
he's called
review.
Israel. He's called Israel. That's Jacob, but can it be pluralized? Can Israel be pluralized?
Let's review. What's this word?
And he will build.
Vayiven, and he will build. What's missing?
Um, the the been and the hay or the yod or whatever it's supposed to be.
The missing yod is definitely missing, but the vowel letter hey at the end is missing.
Mhm.
If this were not a Vayiktol, it would be Yishtacha Ve.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's supposed to be a vav.
Okay. Yeah.
So what we're looking at then is a consonantal vav, which means we have a whole mess of letters going on here. The yiktol yod is definitely a yiktol yod. We can rule that out because the vayiktol needs a yiktol prefix. So what we're looking at is a shin, a tav, a chet, a vav, and a missing yod. Holy smokes, that's a lot of letters. What is this verb?
Ishtamesh, to use.
Lahish ta mesh. And that's going to have a strong dagesh right there. Can you explain what's going on with this verb? What binyan is it?
I think it's a hishtapel.
It is not a hishtafel.
Okay. Good guess though, right?
It's a great guess.
Um,
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a standard hit pa'el. The only problem is that if the tav stayed where it should have stayed, you would lose it. It wouldn't be clearly enunciated. Lehit shamesh. It's like it's not even there. Lehit shamesh. Lehit shamesh. Wait, it disappears. Simply because tav and sheen are pronounced near the same place in the mouth, the one letter swallows up the other. So Hebrew swaps them so that you can hear both of them. That's it. Lehishtamesh. Armed with this information, now go back to this over here.
I thought that that's what you called hishtapel, where they're turned around like that. I thought they were.
That's correct. But what does that mean? We're going deeper than what the grammar books tell us. So what if it's a hishtapel? What does that mean? So let's go a little deeper. If we were to swap these to make it a standard hit pa'el, then what's the root?
A standard hit
Root. Yeah, meaning this tav right here is part of the structure of the word, like it is in lehish tamesh. So the root of lehish tamesh is shin, mem, shin, shamesh, to serve. One serves himself through such and such, meaning he uses it. All right, so let's do the same thing here. What's the first root letter?
Oh, Batishu.
Shin,
No, the tav is part of the hit
Shin.
pa'el.
Shin chet vav.
Shin, chet, vav,
Hey or yod.
yod. 4 root letters. Occasionally, Hebrew has 4 root letters, but this is a very, very nuanced or special root, as Cheryl already pointed out. But let's run with it. Shin, chet, vav, yod. The sheen at the beginning of this root likely comes from another Semitic language. In other Semitic languages, the causative, is it causative or causative? Causative. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not,
Never
that
remember.
looks weird. Anyway, in other Semitic languages, the causative, such as Aramaic, the causative is shafel. Instead of the Hebrew, hif-il.
Mm.
Now, I'm going to put the original vowel instead of the later chirik. It was haf-il. Notice the similarities. Patach, patach, shva, shva, I-class vowel, I-class vowel. They're actually very closely related, but the sheen, for some reason, turns into a hey. The same thing apparently happened with the the pronouns. What is it? Shawa, was it shu or show or something like that is the pronominal suffix in Akkadian. Oh gosh, I'm going out on a limb here. Anyway, Akkadian has a sheen, which in Hebrew turned into a hey, where we get our who. So seeing sheens turn into hays is not a new phenomenon. The same thing happened with the causative voice. So the theory is that another Semitic language had this verb chet vav yod, not necessarily chai as in living, but maybe a different chet, I don't know, in a shafel verb, which Hebrew then adopted and adapted into a hit pa'el verb.
Mm.
And that whole menagerie, that whole process is what the grammar will simplify down to, oh, it's a hishtafel verb. That's great. If you don't know the background behind, look, there's only one verb that's hishtafel, and it's this one. So to say, oh, this is just a hishtafel verb is pointless. In my opinion, it's pointless. It's like when you go to the doctor and say, "Hey, doc, my stomach hurts," and he tells you, "Oh, I know your problem," and he tells you in Latin that your stomach hurts.
Mhm.
And it's like, Doc, you didn't do anything except translate what I said into Latin and call it a special fancy name. Same thing here. Hishtafel means it borrowed from a shafel and got put into a hitpael, and this is the only verb in the whole Bible like it.
Oh,
So
so
back
the
to the
Hishtamesh is not a Hishtafel, is what you're
no,
saying.
correct. Hishtamesh is not a hishtafel. Um, it simply has as the switching of the sheen and tav. What other letters switch besides sheen and tav in the hitpael? Sheen switches, seen switches, samich switches,
The sibilants.
all the sibilants. There's also going to be a problem with tzadi,
Yeah.
except instead of switching the tav, it changes the tav to a tet. Like lehitzta'er. Oh, ani mitzta'er. I'm so sorry.
Mhm.
It's a hit pa'el. Also, the zayin has a problem.
He's the kin.
It turns the tav into a dalit. Zayin is voiced, so tav, which is unvoiced, gets turned into a dalit, which is voiced. Lehizdaken, to grow old. It's a standard hit pa'el. Let me make sure I'm right. Yeah, lehistakel. Uh, Trying to think of a scene. Lehista. I guess it would be lehistaker, maybe.
Leishtaker, to get drunk.
No, no, I'm speaking of sachar, to hire someone, but yeah, we can use that for the first one. Lehistaker, to be hired out, and then hishtaker would be to be intoxicate oneself with strong drink. So here are examples for all of these standard hit pa'el verbs that see what I think it's called metathesis in the Hebrew grammar, where it swaps the first root letter with the tav and occasionally changes the tav to either tet or dalet. Historically, tzadi was an emphatic letter. Thaw, thaw. You actually pronounce it kind of like there's an ayin attached to it. Same thing with the tet. Thaw, thaw. So it makes sense that the tav turns into a tet. Both of these are now pronounced in the same place. They're both emphatic. And this one, like I said, it's because zayin is a voiced sibilant, whereas tav is not, so it turns into a voiced one, which is now dalet. Ta becomes the. Well, that was fun. So that means we're missing a hey on the end. It's the shortened apocryphated form of the Vayyechi. The root letters seem to come from a shafel. But anyway, it means he bowed himself, that is, Israel did, al rosh hamita. What is the root of the word mita?
Is it a yod at the end?
Sure, yeah, there's a yod at the end. We can tell because of the hey.
Mate, then. Then
Let's try this. What's the root of this word?
matan, that's to give.
Well, matan isn't to give. What is to give?
Natan is to give.
Exactly. Why is there a strong dagesh there?
Missing noon.
Missing noon. Now, what's the root of mita?
Namita. So it's noon mem tat.
No, the mem is part of the
Oh.
structure of the word. It turns it into a noun like migdal or mishmar
Oh, okay. So it's
and
noon tat.
yod.
Good.
Nun
Nate.
tet yod, which we know better as nata. Let me think here. Natuya. Well, nata means to. Want to make sure I'm not getting this messed up. It means to lean, to incline, doesn't it?
Lintot. Yeah, I think so.
To incline. So the thing upon which one reclines
Lintoa.
is the mita,
Mm.
or the bed. Oh, okay. Does anybody know this word right here? Sounds
Is it
the same as
A?
mita,
Mm.
but they are not the same. Let me give you a similar word.
Bina bana.
Bina. What's the root of bina?
Bet noon yod. Bet noon bana.
All right. Let me show you a different word.
Oh, bina. Yeah, bina.
What's the root?
Bet yod noon.
Very good. Bet yod nun, hevin, has to do with understanding. So bet yod nun is still the root here. Bina is a feminine noun related to understanding something. It's usually
Wisdom.
it's the standard word for uh abstractly understanding. I want understanding of God or understanding from the hand of God, understanding. That's bina. All right, so what's mita?
So, and we know. Then it would be mit. Yeah, that was
Mut.
dead.
Mut. So mita is a lying down in death,
Mm.
whereas mita is a thing that you recline upon. So sometimes you'll hear this word mita used at a funeral, talking about the lying down in death, as it were. It has nothing to do with bed. It is the act of dying, mita, much like bina is the kind of act of understanding.
So mita is a noun.
Mita, both of them are nouns.
Noun,
It's just
mita.
this one is going to be a more concrete noun, something you can touch, pick up, and paint red. But this is more abstract, an idea.
Can you say a bed of death like mita, mitat, mitat,
Mitat
mita, mitat,
mita.
mita? Yeah.
It would be mitat mita. Maybe that would be a death beer or something like that. Well, enough of such morbid talk. Let's move on to the next verse. Who would like to read? I don't
Come on,
usually.
Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you're smiling. Come on.
Well, I don't usually like to put people on the spot, but Tuesday, do you want to?
Oh, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
ויהי אחרי הדברים האלה, ויאמר יוסף, הנה אביך חולה, ויקח את שני בניו עמו, את מנשה ואת אפרים.
Excellent. I didn't hear the lamed here. Maybe you read it and I just missed it. Vayomer le Yosef.
ליוסף.
All right. So who's the subject of Vayomer le Yosef?
Joseph.
No, because the le
No.
that is the
To
indirect.
Joseph.
Right.
And he said to Joseph, and he
All,
said,
all we know is that this is 3MS, but who's the one that said it? You can see what the translator did here. Some 3MS individual told to Joseph, Hine
Joseph.
avicha chole. So it's not
Is it
explicit here.
Jacob, his father?
It's not explicit. Well, no, Jacob can barely
No.
get out of bed, so it must be some kind of messenger that's saying, "Hey, bud, did you hear the news? Your dad's not doing too well. Maybe you want to go visit him." So it's not told. We're not told who the subject is, but it's somebody.
Can you
It's
say it was told? It was told
right.
they
Well, I mean, because we don't know who the subject is, I feel like there's a little bit of grace for translating it that way. But if you want to be a super stickler, this is an active verb. So the best you could do is translate it as, and then he told him. He who? So you have to make a decision. Are you going to say some unknown individual told Joseph? Or will you turn this active verb into a passive verb and say it was told to Joseph? Either way, you're messing with the Hebrew there, and that's something we'll just have to live with. ויהי אחרי הדברים האלה, ויאמר ליוסף, הנה אביך חולה, ויקח את שני בניו עמו, את מנשה ואת אפרים. What do the two names of Joseph's sons mean? Let's start with the easy one. Ephraim.
Fruitful.
Hmm?
Fruitful.
Fruitful, exactly. We've got pei, resh, and probably a yod as well. And the root is probably pri, fruit. And then the aleph added to the front is not uncommon, especially when a word starts with a shva. Like for example, in Hebrew, Plato's name is Apleton. Where'd the ah come from at the front? This. The same thing happened with the word tmol. Anyone know the word tmol?
Yesterday.
If I add an aleph, you definitely know it. Etmol. So aleph is added to the front of words that start with shva occasionally. Maybe the same thing's happening here. So whether we look at this yod as a plural yod or a dual yod or part of the root, doesn't really matter. It's the root. The root has to be pri because of the explanation Joseph gave us earlier. I'm going to name him Ephraim because God has made me fruitful. So that one's easy. Fruitfulness. What's this one? What's the root meaning?
I forgot. I forgot.
Menashe.
She said, I forgot.
Menashe.
Notice how this is a participle belonging to Shva Patach Dagesh, belonging to a PL verb. It's a PL participle. Menashe is the masculine singular participle that means forgetting or one who is forgetting.
Hmm.
And the idea was that God has made me forget my father's house, and he has Ephraim made me fruitful in this land. And what is the root of hole?
Holy.
I'm so glad you said it that way. How do you spell that? Do you know?
It's a Kmatz Katan?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, I think it is. No, it's a reduced kamatz.
so it's
Holy,
still O.
holy. In pausal form, it would probably be holy. But in this noun form, it shows you all three root letters. But in hole, the yod went missing, and all that's left is a vowel letter hey. Very frustrating. But it's the participle for being weak or sick. Hole. Vayikach. Ooh, we were talking about shortened or reduced or modified vowels. In a standard yiktol, never mind. I almost said something super silly, and now I'm going to take it back. What's this? What's the root of this verb?
Lakach.
Chak.
Lakach.
Lakach. Why is there a dagesh in the kuf?
Missing Lamed.
Missing lamed.
Lamed.
So this is the only verb where lamed is the missing root letter.
Wow.
Let me reword that. This is the only verb where the first root letter has a missing lamed. We could technically we could talk about reduplicated verbs, verbal roots like halal or palal. You know, tefillah has only one lamed. Well, it has a tefillah. I guess it has a strong dagesh in it, but technically one of the lameds has assimilated and disappeared. So I don't want to say this is the only time lamed disappears. No, I'm saying where the first root letter lamed disappears. So in a sense, this lakach behaves the same way as pei nun verbs like nafal. How do you say nafal in the yiktol? He will fall.
Yinpol.
I hear you saying yin
You
ol.
say
I hear you saying yin pol, and if everything were completely strong, you'd be correct. But it
Vayipol.
behaves
Vayipol.
it behaves in such a way that noon at the end of a syllable will assimilate, so it becomes yipol,
Vayipol.
with the noon having assimilated into the second root letter. Same thing that yikach does. So lakach is pretty much thrown in with the rest of the pay noon or first root letter noon category, where the noon often assimilates and goes missing. ויקח את שני בניו עמו את מנשה. Okay, I think we're good. Who would like to read the next verse?
If nobody wants to, I will, but somebody should.
I think Eileen is raising a hand. Do you want to read, Eileen? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, let's see. Begad,
Vayaged
Vayaked, Le Yaakov,
Mhm.
Ve Vayomer,
Vayomer
Hine, Ben Ha, Yesov,
Yosef
Yosef, Ba, Leach,
Elecha
Eleja, Ve, 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 no, Vayeto, Vayeto,
this is a chet and not a tav. Vayitchazek.
Zek,
Mhm.
Yisrael,
Mhm.
Ve, Veyiskam,
Vayeshev
Vayeshev, Od, no,
al
Al, Hameto,
Hamita.
Hamitah,
Hamita. Very good. Vayaged leYaakov. Vayomer. Hine bincha Yosef ba elecha vayitchazek Yisrael vayeshev al hamita. Now, I wanted to point out, since there was all that talk earlier about how Vayiktols take a shortened form unless they're in some sort of a pausal, syntactically in a pausal position. Notice how with this Zakef Gadol, which should be pausal and is introducing direct speech, nevertheless, it's not Vayomar. It's Vayomer. That's rather unpredictable. I would have suspected Vayomar, and he said, here comes the quote, but instead the shortened form is maintained inexplicably. I don't know why.
Could it be because the accent is over the yo by yo man?
No. It's precisely that's circular logic. If there were a patach here, then the
Mhm.
exact same symbol would show up here.
Right.
So the question is, when do we expect Vayomer? When do we expect Vayomar? And usually, except for here apparently, usually the pausal forms, such as Zakef Katon, Zakef Gadol, Revia, Etnach, all of those should have Vayomar.
Mm.
But here, inexplicably, it has a disjuncting zakef gadol, but it's still vayomer. I'm sorry, I don't have a good reason for it. Sorry. So just wanted to point that out. Voila. Vayaged. What kind of a verb is vayaged? Form, minyan, root. Parse it out for me.
Vayikto.
Yeah, the vayikol,
Vayyechi.
which means that we have a yiktol prefix.
A
Okay.
Yicto prefix.
So that's our
Call.
yod.
It's a 3ms.
Okay.
Call.
Now I hear Tuesday saying it's call.
Okay.
Do we have a dissenting opinion?
Well, I guess it could be he feel.
There's a patach followed by an I-class vowel. It is most certainly
He feel.
a he feel. So patach under your yiktol prefix is ordinarily he feel, but the fact that it's followed by an I-class vowel pretty much seals the deal. What's the root?
Hey,
Noon. Gimo Dalit.
Missing noon, gimel, dalet.
Noon.
Excellent. So the dagesh in the gimel, which is a strong dagesh, tells us there's a missing letter. It is noon. What is the root neged?
Naked.
against.
Exactly. Some
Against.
kind of face off or opposition, whether friendly or whether friend or foe, it's showing some sort of facing each other. If it's a foe, then we're going to call it opposition. But if it's friendly, what do you call it? Confrontation or conversation? Because the verb here, causing to neged, means to have a discussion, have a conversation, to tell one person tell another. Okay. And he, again, we don't know who the he is. Somebody told to Jacob and said, maybe it's the same guy, I don't know. Quote, Hine bincha Yosef ba. Behold, your son Joseph. Is this a construct chain?
No.
No, it's just apposition. Your son, that is Joseph. Like Jerry, my barber. Same, these are essentially equal. It's not a construct chain. Behold, your son, that is Joseph, ba. Parse this out for me.
The root is bet vav aleph.
Very good. Which has to do with coming, entering, or arriving.
Oh.
Anything beyond that? Binyan, form, person, gender, number.
Is it katal?
Or call.
Call.
Okay, those are two different words that mean two different things. Katal is a completed tense, kal is a binyan. So both answers are correct. It is the kal binyan, which is also pa'al, and it is katal in the sense of a completed action. Right?
Yes.
3ms.
It could be a 3ms katal, but if so, then that means it's already a completed action, which means Joseph is standing right there while this one tells his father, your son has come. No kidding, Sherlock.
Is it a participle?
Very good. So a kal participle appears the exact same way, whether it's ba, a 3ms completed action, he came, or whether it's a masculine singular participle ba, ladies and gentlemen, they are identical. So how are we going to translate it? Use the context. If dude is talking to Jacob, maybe Joseph hasn't arrived yet, but he's on his way. So let's call it a participle. So this is probably the correct answer, even though grammatically it could also be a katal. It just wouldn't make as much sense. I just imagine Israel, Jacob lying there like, I'm not blind, dummy. I can see he's arrived. Vayyechi. What binyan is this?
Is it heat pile?
Mm-hmm. And the root chazak means
Strengthened?
to be.
Strength.
Okay, so chazak is to be strong. Vayyechi means he made himself strong. He mustered up his strength. Remember, he's sick in bed, but his son is coming. He's like, oh, goody, gumdrops. So he gets up in bed. Vayyeshev. Is this a shortened or apocryphated form? Let me ask the question a different way. What would be the standard yiktol form of this verb?
Neshev.
Yeshev.
Oh.
Yeshev, with the stress here, means he will sit. The Vayyiktol flips the tense, so instead of he will sit, it becomes he sat. But look, the stress moved from the sheen to the yod. Vayyeshev. Yes, it is an apocryphated form, which we expect in Vayyiktols. Vayyeshev. There's the accent mark right there. Also, the fact that it has a segol there tips you off that it's probably going to be penultimate stress. Vayyeshev. And he sat al hamita, on the reclining thing, the bed. Okay, any questions on this before we read the next one? Who would be so kind as to read the next verse? All right, go ahead, Cheryl. Oh, Tuesday. Yeah, please go ahead. Cheryl, get the next one. Don't worry.
Vayomer Yaakov El Yosef El Shaddai Nir'ah Elai Beluz Be'eretz Kenaan Vayavarech Oto.
Excellent.
Oh no,
I see.
OT.
OT, exactly. I was so happy you got the stress right there. Maybe you were too. You're like, I got the stress. And then it's like, oh, OT. I don't know. Maybe not.
I
Excellent reading.
was.
I figured. I would probably do the same thing. It's like, ooh, the stress moved. Especially with all this talk about stress moving, apoccupation, Vayyiktol's, Jussives. That's what's happening here. Here, let me read through one time, even though you did a fantastic job. Vayomer Yaakov El Yosef El Shaddai Nir'ah Elai Beluz Be'eretz Kanaan Vayvarech Oti. There's our Vayiktol, apocryphated, penultimate stress. El Shaddai. We could talk a lot about this. Maybe we will here in a second. Nir'ah. Luz. Let's start with something fun. Does anybody know the meaning of luz? It's trivial. I mean, it's not like you're going to find this word showing up excessively in the Bible. Luz is almond. And if I'm not mistaken, it's actually an almond before it ripens for harvest. Apparently, English also has another word for almond before it ripens for harvest, but I've since forgotten that a long time ago. Almonds. Israel is full of almonds. A lot of bitter almonds, too, in case you all didn't know. Bitter almonds seem to have some sort of, don't be scared, cyanide compound in them that some people claim is an excellent food to have against carcinogenic effects. By the way, vitamin B12 can have cyanide in it as well. So you could think of it as a vital mineral or vital element. Anyway, so luz is an almond. Nir'ah. What kind of a verb is nir'ah?
Nifal?
Nifal. Is
Meatball.
nir'eh also a nifal?
Is that a trick question?
Of course. I wouldn't ask any other kind. What do you think? I'm going to give you some low-hanging fruit here?
It is, but I think it's a different tense, maybe.
Ashlyn, do you have your hand up to read? Okay. Yeah,
I
so the
mean,
question on the table, is this a nifal?
Yeah. Nira. Yes.
All right. Parse it out. If it's a nifal, parse it out.
How do you parse again?
Uh, how do you
Start
parse?
with root. Do you start with the root?
so Resh
You can.
Aleph
As long
Hey
as
is
you,
the root.
as
Resh
long
Aleph
as you,
Yod
yeah,
is the
as long
root.
as you get the four components, it doesn't matter what order. We need to know the root, the binyan, the form, the person, gender, number.
Somebody just said the root.
Okay, the root.
Resh Aleph Yod.
Okay, resh, aleph, yod. We said it's nifal. Now what?
3MS.
I will accept MS, but not 3MS.
Not 3MS. Okay. MS,
In
multiple
what
assume.
universe, in what universe does a verbal form only have gender and number but no person?
Participle.
Participle.
Participles.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone ever heard the Hebrew word kinir'eh?
Yeah.
Kinir'eh. I thought that was spelled with a tzere. Can
I don't know.
anybody confirm whether the participle has a tzere or a segol? Maybe not. Here, let me see if I can do it. And scooch over here. Let me have a look. I'm looking for nir a. Oops, there we go. Let's just do, okay, here we go. So that's nir a.
Tenir.
Nir a, call imperfect. Okay, so it doesn't exist in the Bible as a participle. Bummer. Okay, so nir a as an imperfect, hang on a second. Call imperfect, 1CP. Oh, that's kal and not nifal. Exactly. I just showed my cards.
Ah, ha, ha.
Dang it. Didn't mean to do that. Anyway, so nir a in modern Hebrew. Yeah, bummer. I'll get over it.
So near
So option number one. Oh, of course. Let me look it up this way. What if I could look for another word that ends in a hey and then look for the participle form of it, right? Let's look for a nifal verb. Oops. Nifal participle that ends with a hey.
Mm.
No, oh, I have to search for, no, I don't. Search the absolute, no. Nah. Evidently, I've got something wrong with the participle. Let me do this. Okay, so there's a nifal. So how do I find participle? Necha, necha. Are there no participles in the nifal in the Bible? That sounds absurd. I know there are. Like the like nisharim, right? That shows up in the Bible. Come on, show me a participle.
but does that end with hey?
Well, okay, they all end with hey, and that's fine, but I'm just trying to find a participle instead of an imperfect. So let me try participle. See if that even exists. Maybe I'm typing something wrong. Yeah, I'm typing something wrong. It's got to be. All right. I'm so sorry for wasting time. Let's look up an actual participle like nish rim. What? I know it shows up in the Bible.
Mhm.
It's why isn't it? It's taking its time, huh? Okay. Chugging, chugging, chugging. Okay, I have a better idea. Let's do it this way. Let's look for a verb sha'al, and then look for the nifal. See how that's H7604? H7604. But now I want it to be in the nifal. Verb nifal. Yep. There we go. Now, look at this. That's what I was supposed to type in. Okay, so let me try that. Participle. What a silly thing. Okay, now that I've got that, let's go back to deleting this and finding a verb that ends in hey. Nifal participle. Search. Yes. All right. All right. Nivze has a segol. Niv'e has a segol. In fact, we could even put in a MS right there to narrow it down even more. Of course, I can't type in Hebrew. Participle. MS. There we go. All right, so there are 20 verbs, and they all end in seg. Oh, not this one. Venich'e. That's a tzere. Venave is also a tzere. Wow. Okay, so most of them are segols. Never mind. Now go back to here. Kenir'e could be a participle, or it could be, or sorry, without the ka, it could also be a kal binyan, first common singular. We will see. Nir'e.
Nire.
Nir'e. We will see.
But then it's Yigtol, right? If it's call.
But then it's yiktol. Very good. So one form looks the same, whether it's a nifal participle ms or a yiktol kal 1cs.
No.
Yay. Okay, what is going on with this verb here? Vayvarech. What is the binyan?
Is it PL?
Absolutely. How did you know?
Thank you. That thing, under the yod. Can't think of it right now. And then the
Shiva.
ray should have a dagesh.
Shava?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ray should have
Shiva, thank
dash.
you, Eileen. I'm sorry, I had a brain lapse.
Since the resh can't take the dagesh, it causes the lengthening from patach to kamatz. We expect a shva, kamatz, dagesh. Resh says no thank you, so it lengthens the preceding vowel. It's still a PL, absolutely. And I guess because it's vayiktol, maybe that's one of the reasons why apocapates and becomes vayivarech instead of vayivarech, like it is in the priestly blessing. All right, well, that was fun. Anything else in here I skipped? Oh, yeah. The word Shaddai, nobody really knows where it comes from. It could come from the, what is it, Akkadian word Shadu, which means mountains or mighty. And that's where they get El Shaddai, God Almighty. It could also come from shadayim, which are breasts, which talk about supplication, like God provides everything that one needs. It could, I hate to go, I absolutely hate to go this direction, but the word shedim
Demons.
is demons. And it makes you wonder whether there were false gods that were, the god over the demons or something. I don't know. It was a really messed up time in the ancient Near East. All sorts of false idol worship. A lot of the names that ultimately get attributed to God were also attributed to false gods, and that really stinks to tell people that, because it can kind of erode one's faith. It doesn't erode mine. I'm like, holy smokes, God can still get the glory through something so defiled? Dang. Not only can he use imperfect people to transmit his word for generations to come, he can get glory out of something so rank. Wow. Anyway, so nobody knows what it means. So that's why the King Jimmy just said God Almighty, but it may be something more like God who supplies as well. Or it could be that other
What
equal option.
question? Why is Vayomer apocryphated? Is it because the
Vayyechi.
olive is gone?
No, it doesn't have to do with the Aleph. It has to do with the Vayyechi. Vayyechi's prefer to get apocryphated forms, same as the Vayvarech. It got shortened and the stress got moved simply because it's a Vayyechi. And this is what we expect in Vayyechi's. Then the follow-up question I imagine would be, how come we don't see it more often in all verbs? And that would be a fair question. Is that the question you were thinking of?
Uh,
Maybe.
I'm just baffled. I don't understand. Is it the vowel that's shortened, or is it
Okay.
something that dropped
Okay.
out?
So this is a matter of turning left where the old post office used to be. And whenever you see a segol at the end of a verb like this, it's because
Mm-hmm.
originally it was a double schwa at the end. And because it's a double schwa, it cannot take the stress, and that's why the stress moved. Then later on, someone decided, boy, that's hard to say. Let's shove a vowel in there to make it easier. Now it's vayomer instead of vayomer. The more elaborate explanation is that Vayiktul forms came from a shortened yaktul verb, whereas Yiktul forms came from a lengthier yaktulu form. They were very,
Gotcha.
very, very similar, except that this one was longer and that one was shorter. So if Vayiktuls can get shorter in memorial of this shorter verbal form, they do. Whereas the Yiktul forms will typically be longer. But that just becomes sort of a sometimes rule, which really irks me. So I hate teaching sometimes rules. I like
Okay,
things that
thank you.
work consistently. So what I tell my students is expect apocompation, and if it doesn't, then well, you didn't lose anything.
Okay.
Ashlyn, you would like to read? We're a little bit over time, but I want to go ahead and give this to you to read. I appreciate you volunteering. Please, the floor is all yours.
Um, Vayomer el Eli Kini Maf Bracha Vahir Bitaka Unataika Likhal Amim Venatati et Haaretz Haz Hazot Lazar Aka Areka Ehuzat Olam.
Very good. Thank you. Vayomer Elai, Rivi, so we'll put a pause right there. This is now what? Jacob quoting to Joseph what was told to him by God. Hinni mafrecha v'hirbiticha unetaticha likhal amim v'natati et haaretz hazot lezar'acha acharecha achuzat olam. What is the root of achuzat?
Achaz,
What does that mean?
to grasp.
Grasp. Achuzat appears to be an abstract feminine noun of something that is passive participle grasped. It's a possession, a holding. Ooh, here we get to see. Oh, well, let me ask you. What binyan or form is this word?
Lehafir.
What is it?
Hefir?
Yes.
Mafir.
Yes, it is he feel. Why is there a mem?
Participle.
Which makes it technically an adjective. So we're looking for gender number, not person gender number.
Masculine singular.
Yep. Right.
Masculine
This is God.
singular.
Exactly. This is God saying, behold me doing the action of making fruitful ha, you. So just to let you guys know, I will make you fruitful sounds like a future tense. Whereas hineni mafrecha sounds more like, behold, I am making you fruitful. I don't know how it rings in your ears, but it sounds different to me. And I think it's closer to the Hebrew. V'hirbiticha. Okay, here we have a vayiktal, vekatal. How do we translate a vekatal? Maybe with the preceding stuff that came before it? And if so, does that mean we should translate this as, and I am multiplying you, since it follows this adjective? Or do we just opt for a future tense, and I will multiply you? I don't know. Unetaticha, and I will give or make or set you. Likhal. What is a likhal?
Ahal is a
Very
crown.
good. So why is there a li in front of it?
Question. I will make you.
Is that direct object?
Um,
No. Okay.
well, I'm going to go ahead and say no. However, there are times, especially in archaic Hebrew, where la is a direct object marker. I'm not sure that it's here though. I will make or set you for indirect or dative case. I will make you for kahal is the absolute form. Kal is the construct of amim, a congregation of nations, a coming together of nations. I don't really like the translation multitude here. I would think of like hamon, like a hustle, bustle, blah, 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 blah. No, that's not a multitude. It's a coming together. It's a congregation of amim, peoples. And not people, but peoples. There's a, if you can't turn that into a sermon, you have no preach in you. Venatati, venatati, and I will give or make or set et. Okay, here it would be give because of the et. And I will give et haaretz hazot, this land, lezar'acha, to your zera. The original form of which is zara. This preserves the original form of the word, zara. But that's hard to say, so it turned into zera. Your seed, or figuratively, your descendants. Acharecha, after you. Achuzat olam, as a possession to the vanishing point, that is forever. Okay, comments or questions? You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for coming. When Passover and I believe Easter are here on Sundays, April 13th and 20th, I'm probably not going to be here. So just want to give you a heads up for that, but I look forward to seeing you all next week. Until then, continue studying
להתראות.
Hebrew. Lehitraot v'shalom.
Shalom.
Jared, one last
Shalom,
thing.
thanks, Jared.
I need to schedule a private session with you this week prior to Thursday if you have any availability.
Okay. Can you contact me on either WhatsApp or Telegram?
Yes.
All right, super. I'll look forward to hearing from you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, shalom. Bye.
Shalom.
Shalom.